Time for a great discussion about an issue in sport, a big issue for many people involved in sport. And remember these words: if in doubt, sit it out. That's the message from the key medical bodies in the Australian Institute of Sport, who are joining forces to increase awareness of the dangers of concussion in sport. Dr. David Hughes is the Chief Medical Officer of the AIS. He joins me now from Canberra. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Doctor. Why have you seen the need to bring all these bodies together and announce a statement on concussion for all sport? We're not just talking about professionals here.
That's right. I think sometimes concussion is portrayed as a boutique injury that's only of concern in professional contact or collision sports. But the truth is that concussion is a public health issue that affects athletes of all ages and all capabilities across the full spectrum of Australian sports. So it's very important that all Australians have access to the most up-to-date, comprehensive and reliable information possible, and that's what this initiative does.
Okay, as part of the statement you outline concussion and how to best treat it. How long should someone sit out if they're heavily concussed?
Well, we think that anybody who's concussed firstly must be removed from the field of play and must not return to play that day. They should not return to play until cleared to do so by a medical practitioner. But it's important to understand that children take longer to recover from concussion than adults. And so this initiative, which is called Concussion in Sport Australia, strongly recommends that children are symptom-free for 14 days before they return to contact or collision activities. Yep. And to be clear there, we're not saying 14 days from the time of injury, we're saying symptom-free for 14 days. So if a child has a concussion and has symptoms that last for 3 weeks, we believe they shouldn't return to contact or collision activities until about 5 weeks. So it really depends on the duration of symptoms. And I think I should point out that this is a collaboration between the AIS, the AMA, the Australasian College of Sport and Exercise Physicians, and Sports Medicine Australia. Yep. And by bringing these 4 peak medical and sporting organisations together, we're ensuring that Australians have access to up-to-date and reliable resources that they can trust.
Okay, what about adults? How long should they sit out after they, once they get symptom-free, like children?
We don't determine a specific time. What we say is that they should enter a structured and graduated return to sport protocol, which starts with 1 or 2 days of deliberate rest, followed by gradually increasing physical activity. The earliest they could get back is potentially around 6 days, but it really depends on their symptoms. Every concussion is different, and that's why it's very important that all concussions and the return to sport after concussion is monitored by a medical practitioner.
I know sporting organisations have got better concussion testing now, and they take it, I'm sure they take it more seriously now, but time and again I see footballers knocked out, carried off the field, and they play next week. Is that okay?
Every case of concussion is different, and certainly no athlete should return to anywhere near contact or collision activities if they are still symptomatic.
You think that's okay to come back a week later though, as a general rule? I know they're all different, but a player gets carried off on a stretcher because they're being concussed. Is it okay to play the next week? Is their brain safe?
The only way, from my belief around the evidence on concussion, the only way that someone should be able to return to sport the following week is if they were completely asymptomatic the next day. So if they still had symptoms for 2 or 3 days, in my opinion, that would rule them out for the following week. So someone would have to be completely asymptomatic the next day. And just on that point about the changing, how professional codes treat concussion, I'm not involved in professional codes, but what I will say is that a decade ago, it was very common, and in fact some statistics suggest the majority of people a decade ago who suffered a concussion returned to play on the same day. That's in high-level professional sport. These days, it's very unusual for someone who is diagnosed with concussion to return in under 6 days, and so that's a big turnaround. And I think there has been a change in the culture around concussion where it's no longer seen as a badge of courage to push on with concussion, and I think athletes and coaches and sporting organisations are getting the message that players are the most valuable resource and we need to take care of their health.
That's a good thing. Doctor, just before you go, we're short on time, but I've got to ask you this. It's curious in your statement that you said there's currently no strong evidence linking sport-related concussion with CTE. injury. We know that the NFL has admitted to this overseas. We know that organisations in Australia still argue against it. In fact, the AFL is facing a class action on this. But the AFL is actually a supporter in principle of your statement. Why would you even go there in this? Because that's going to be contested in the courts, and already in America, as I said, the NFL has admitted to it.
When you say the NFL has admitted to it,
yep.
I think they have settled a no-fault claim, so I don't think they've...
No, the Executive Vice President of the NFL for Health and Safety admitted to the House Government and Commerce Committee in 2016. He was asked point blank and he admitted to it. That was after they settled and admitted no fault.
The state of the science is that the studies that have been done, and probably the most famous studies are the brain donation studies. The problem with that is, and the authors of those studies admit, that the only people who donate their brains to science are people who are already suffering physical signs of degenerative brain disease before they donate their brains.
Yep.
The frustration for me and for others who have an interest in concussion is that properly controlled design studies that control for confounding variables like alcohol use, drug use, and etc. have not been performed. They are underway at the moment, but the evidence is still out. And individuals can say what they like. My understanding of looking at the literature, because I would desperately like to see a conclusive answer on this,
yeah.
that right now there is no conclusive evidence linking sport-related concussion with long-term degenerative brain disease.
Well,
we may see that evidence in the future,
yeah.
but the final point I'd say is the best way to protect individuals against short-term and long-term potential damage from concussion is to treat each case seriously and do not return the sport prematurely.
Yep. We're out of time. Perhaps we'll talk about CTE another time when we've got longer to discuss it. Dr. Hughes, thanks for your time. I'm sure this concussion statement's going to help the welfare of kids and adults throughout Australia. Thank you.
Thank you.